I want to make you think differently about sex education. Whether you are for sex education, against it, or somewhere in between is not what I want to make you think differently about. Instead, by the time you're finished watching this video, and forever after that, whenever you're thinking about sex education, I also want you thinking about racism. Sex education comes in many forms: comprehensive, abstinence-plus, abstinence-only, and no sex education at all. But only comprehensive sex education is based on science. Comprehensive sex education is driven by the scientific method. It is not driven by morality, ideology, or personal beliefs. As defined by science, comprehensive sex education is emotionally, cognitively, and socially age appropriate. Comprehensive sex education is comprehensive in the number and variety of topics it covers, which ideally include anatomy and physiology, communication and goal-setting skills, language and consent, culture and identity, gender and orientation, love and relationships, health and wellness, sexually transmitted infections, safe sex, pregnancy, violence and abuse, and accessing valid information about sex and sexuality. Comprehensive sex education has one purpose: to facilitate the development of sexually healthy people. When compared to other forms of sex education, comprehensive sex education is the gold standard because of its empirically demonstrated benefits. It increases students' self-esteem and self-efficacy while decreasing their potential for discrimination, stereotypes, prejudices, unplanned pregnancies, abortions, maternal deaths, high school and college dropouts, and sexual assaults. For example, in our own laboratory, we found students who successfully completed a college-level human sexuality course were less likely to make sexual stereotypes, hold sexual prejudices, and act in sexually discriminatory ways. And John Santelli and his colleagues at Columbia University found K-12 comprehensive sex education programs serve as a protective factor from being sexually assaulted. Ironically, with all the benefits of comprehensive sex education, most Americans do not receive it. And this is especially true for Black Americans. According to researchers at Washington University, the United States Department of Health and Human Services, and the Guttmacher Institute, Black Americans have significantly fewer opportunities for taking comprehensive sex education courses than white Americans have. Now, get ready to think differently about sex education. Countries lacking comprehensive sex education tend to have higher levels of racism, whereas countries with more in-depth comprehensive sex education, typically having kindergarten through 12th grade programs, tend to have lower levels of racism. Racism stems in part from discrimination. Discrimination is an action against a person because of the person's group affiliation. For example, a person may not be hired for a job because of their race, not because of their qualifications for the job. As humans, we are not born to discriminate. Oh, repeat it with me. We do not naturally discriminate. Instead, we learn to discriminate from stereotypes and prejudices. Stereotypes are the beliefs we have about people because of their group affiliations. For example, we may judge a person's intelligence based upon their race. We naturally hold and use stereotypes because stereotypes save our metabolic energy. It takes less energy to think about what we know about a group of people, in this case, a particular race's intelligence, than each of the individual's level of intelligence composing a race. But here's the kicker. Although we naturally make stereotypes and they really do conserve energy, they are mostly false. And this stereotype about accurately judging intelligence relative to race is false. Race does not predict intelligence when environmental factors such as socioeconomic status, single-parent households, exposure to lead, and housing segregation are vetted. Prejudices come from stereotypes. They are the feelings you have about people because of their group affiliations. Prejudices are often negative. For example, we may think a race is beneath us because they are less intelligent. Resulting from the cyclical combination of discrimination, stereotypes, and prejudices, racism is defined as overpowering, controlling, and subjugating a group of people. Its costs are enormous. For example, racism has caused Black Americans more physical illnesses, less employment, more incarcerations, less happiness, more sexual assaults, less healthcare, more violence, less education, more single-parent households, less marriages, greater poverty, and shorter lifespans. Because racism is based on often false stereotypes and negative prejudices, racism is maladaptive for the whole of us as a human species. Obviously, racism is costly for the people being discriminated against, and surprisingly, racism is costly for the people doing the discriminating too. For example, Con D of the University of Massachusetts found people holding racist views are socially, psychologically, and physically unhealthier than people holding non-racist views. Although it is often presented as being fueled by real biological or psychological differences, racism is not about a race's genetics or traits or intelligence or motivation. In fact, there is little scientific evidence for there being any more than one race within the human species. The so-called human races are more than 99% genetically alike, and you are more likely to find biological and psychological differences within the human races than between them. Racism in the United States is fueled by stereotypes created by the moral authorities of the American culture, like governments, religions, economics, laws, and education. Only when these stereotypes are extinguished can racism be eliminated. One of the moral authorities, education, has the ability to create or extinguish stereotypes. When education is rooted in traditions, beliefs, and ideology, education creates stereotypes. When education is rooted in data, logic, and science, education extinguishes stereotypes. For example, Cindy Kiernan and Tricia Davis at the University of Wisconsin found diversity of courses rooted in logic and the science of psychology decreases students' stereotypic racial attitudes and prejudices. Since comprehensive sex education courses are rooted in science and have been empirically shown to reduce sexual stereotypes, prejudices, and discrimination, and are more likely to exist in less racist countries, might they also be able to reduce racial stereotypes, prejudices, and discrimination? At a minimum, comprehensive sex education courses should stop some of the costs of racism from occurring. For example, one of racism's costs for Black Americans is a higher potential for being sexually assaulted, and one of comprehensive sex education's benefits for its students is a lower potential for being sexually assaulted. Thus, if made widely available, comprehensive sex education courses would decrease the potential of Black Americans being sexually assaulted. And if not made widely available, the absence of comprehensive sex education courses will allow this particularly heinous cause of racism to go unabated. Well, how'd I do? Have I made you think differently about sex education? Are you thinking about how important comprehensive sex education may be for combating racism and reducing its cost? Full disclosure, I know comprehensive sex education is not going to end racism, but I do know that it can decrease some of racism's ugly effects from occurring. And now you know that too. So the next time the topic of sex education comes up, whether you're with friends, family, or even complete strangers, speak up. Because you do know that comprehensive sex education's positive effects in society are about way more than just sex.